allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Hubbard County Board meeting, and I call this meeting to order. First item is agenda approval.
I do have one item to add under administrator, and that is consideration of the combining of the assessor and recorder's office.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Agenda is approved. Public input. Is there any? Oh, okay, we close public input. Consent agenda. Any discussion, things to pull?
I'll move to approve.
Pretty straightforward this time.
Yep, short.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. And we have employee recognition. In the Sheriff's Department, we have Hunter Schomer, dispatcher jailer, began full-time position on November 15th. And in Social Services, Beth Renenberg, financial assistant supervisor, is recognized for 15 years of service. And then Jana Crawford, social worker, Children's Services, began full-time position on November 8th. Oh, welcome. Okay. And we move on to the highway. Jed, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Pretty quick agenda for you today. We've just got one item on here that has a bunch of additions or a bunch of documents included. So we are looking to review and approve resolutions in support of local road improvement program grant funding. So a couple years ago, we had put in, I think, 11 applications went through the county, and I think, what do we have, 8 or 9? 8 this time. So everything is included there. If you have questions regarding any specific ones, we can certainly talk about it, but looks like 5 townships, a couple cities, and then we've got one for Hubbard County as well for the intersection of 7 and 40. Try and get some funding for that one. That's could be an expensive project. With the LRIP programs now, the cap on the funding is up to 1.5 million. So everybody kind of competes a little bit different. Townships go against townships, counties go against counties and whatnot. So we think that there's some good opportunities here for to get multiple projects awarded. Again, we got 3 last time, which was really good out of 400 and some applications. I'm expecting this will be no different, so.
I was at the Hubbard County Township Association meeting last night, and they were appreciative of being able to get into something like this.
Good.
I'm curious about Schoolcraft, because of course that's where I live. And what are they looking at to do on the?
So the one for Schoolcraft is on Schoolcraft Trail, and it would go from the main road that comes through by Evergreen Lake there up to the public access to it. I had talked to one of the supervisors in that township. We'd actually considered both this funding and State Park Road account. Unfortunately, because the State Park Road account would make total sense to go to the public access like that. That's what that's for. But when the DNR, what we need to do is we need to get support from the local rep for the DNR, and there wasn't quite enough usage based on their knowledge on this to support a State Park Road account. And so we're like, okay, that's fine. We'll put it in for the LRIP and see. It's a small project. I don't think that they're looking at adding pavement because there's nothing paved around there. So it would basically be just grading the road and maybe doing some ditching, similar to what was done at like the culvert site, and then a little bit further west.
Oh, okay.
A couple years back with the Natural Resource Management Group.
And that's what I was, that's what I was kind of wondering, because I know past the public access and past the creek, I know we did a lot of work on that hill coming down that was eroding.
Right.
And going into the creek and everything. And then, of course, I know Schoolcraft Trail goes all the way out to basically number 9 by the Rockwood Town Hall, and I didn't imagine that was gonna encompass all of that.
Right, so this is, and it could, I mean, the scope of this could balloon to that, but that becomes a much larger project, and then you get into, well, you have more disturbance, you get into permitting issues and whatnot, but that's potential, but the stretch that we talked about would have been up to the public access, so.
And that's what I was kinda imagining, it's maybe quarter of a mile.
Yep, correct.
Roads are tight up to the road.
Yep.
And that's what I was thinking, the only thing I could think of is maybe you're gonna make a little bit of ditch or something and
Yep.
take some of those trees out.
There's quite a few homes in that area
Yeah.
too, so, yeah.
All right, thank you.
So Jed, how many of these are reapplications from last year?
You know, there's only a couple, I think. Clover Townships on the Little Mantrap Drive is a reapplication, but I think that the scope is just a little bit different. These are kind of interesting projects, because you look at it and you kind of look big picture at what they're kind of looking for, but until you know that you're gonna have funding, you don't really nail down what the specifics are. But yeah, I know they've got issues with maintaining that stretch of road, and so that's a reapp. Henrietta Townships is a reapplication as well, and that's the road that goes on the north side of Hafner's down towards Long Lake. They have what you'd call poor man's pavement or road mix on there. Not a super durable surface, and so it'd be to replace that, and
That one, it looked like the substrate wasn't
Yep.
quite right, because there's a
Correct.
lot of,
yep, so a project like this would be able to come in and you could regrade that and fix that and then get a good surface on it. You know, what these are supposed to be for townships is a route of regional significance, and that is a very, very subjective term on that. So what I've never wanted to get into is telling a township or a city or something that, you know, we wouldn't support that project, because we're not essentially the ones that are grading these applications, and so we want to support them, get the application in there, and then let the powers that be decide where they want to throw the money.
the reason I asked about the reapplication is if you do this multiple years over and over and over again, and an application just isn't getting any traction anywhere, are we lessening our odds for other projects to potentially get done by continuing to reapply with ones that they're not looking favorably on maybe?
You know, I don't think so. That's just my opinion on it. And the reason being is what happened last time with all those applications is they got scored and they started going down as far as they had the money for, which, you know, makes sense. And then another pot of money was eligible for it, and so they went back to that same list as opposed to having another solicitation for it. And so a few projects got funded, and that's how Henrietta's 204th got funded this last time. But I was actually glad to hear that for this solicitation, it was gonna be an all-new, and yes, you can reapply, but they weren't gonna go back to that same list, because the further down you get on the list, obviously the less desirable maybe those projects are. So this is good, but still, yeah, you can apply. I don't think it hurts the chances. I don't know that it fares any better for them to reapply, because it wasn't graded high enough last time.
So it doesn't matter what county the project's from, they're all looked at in one big pile and graded that way?
Allegedly.
Across the state?
Yes, correct, yeah. I think that they spread it around. I think that that's part of it. But, you know, of the three projects that got selected last time, I mean, Fair Avenue was the one, I mean, that's prototypical for the LRIP program with as much industry as that supports. You know, so that, I think that was like maybe ranked number 2 in the state for applications, which is good. That means the program is working. And, yeah, so I thought Arago was a good project too, and Henrietta's as well, but.
Okay. Do we, all right, we have a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
That's all we got.
That's all you got.
Thanks.
Corey?
Good morning.
Morning.
The first item I have today is to review and approve a state fiscal year 24 grant and aid application from the Timberland Dirt Devils ATV Club for maintenance maintenance funding for the Round River Drive East ATV Trails. So this would be east of Highway 64 by Akeley. That's their yearly application they put into us to be their sponsor. And this would enable me to be their fiscal agent and to make sure that they're following the maintenance requirements for their trails. Just need approval to be their sponsor for fiscal year 24. And they've been a very good trail club so far, in my opinion, so they're doing a good job.
I do have a question. Who is responsible, or I guess, do you have anything to do with any of the maintenance at all? What maintenance is performed, when is performed, any measures that are taken to?
Not on these ATV Club grant and aid trails.
Okay.
We're just making sure that they are maintaining.
Yeah.
They do all the maintenance to these
We're
trails.
basically the pass-through.
Yep,
Do you communicate with them regularly?
I
at all?
do. Yep,
Okay.
I do. The
Because
club
I've got a lot
president.
of complaints about the approaches.
Sure.
Not only on township roads, driveways, county roads as well. I wish Jed would hung around for
Yeah.
just a little bit longer. Because there's a product out there that I have seen utilized that
Sure.
is tremendous on stopping erosion and deterioration of the, crossing the roadway.
Sure.
And maybe I should contact one of these members of this trail club
Yep.
to
Yeah.
get that information to them, because it works fantastic for,
Is it that stuff that looks almost like blacktop, or?
no, it's called Fleximat. It's made by Rock White. It's little conical pieces of concrete that are on a mesh backing, and it comes in like a 30-foot long roll, but it's gonna be super heavy.
Sure, yeah.
But then anyway, you cut it off where you want, you roll it out, you set it in, and you can put dirt over the top, and grass will grow through the areas where there's soil exposed, and it does a tremendous job.
I think I've seen something similar to that when we were on the planning commission for erosion control or something, as I recall.
Yeah, that's another purpose for it, sure.
You know how expensive those are?
I wanna say a roll of it is like, boy, I just had that number too the other day. I have some paperwork at home that has that, but it's like $1,800 a roll, I believe.
How many approaches will a roll do?
Well, it's 30 feet long, so you can cut it in half, you can do 15 on, so, I mean, that could be figured out, but, I mean, it's a tremendous product. I think it works fantastic.
We've talked about this.
Yeah. County Road 4 is one of them. Yeah. Yep.
Public safety meeting on how to try to resolve this problem, and we really never come up with a solution, but that might be something to pass on to Jed and
Yep.
Corey
Yeah,
and Jeff, because it might be something where we could experiment with it.
Yeah.
And see if it really
Yep.
does
Mhm.
work.
okay.
It's
Yeah, and I
give it a
think
try.
I think I actually emailed some of that to our township, some of that information, so I'll go back in my email string and see if I can
Pick a
find
spot up
something.
County Road 4 that
Yep.
gets hit pretty hard and try it.
There's
and
all
see if it-
over, so, and I just noticed when I was looking at the map that these trails run along 64, 34, 25, I just wanna try to get,
Yeah,
it's
and-
in my district, so I mean,
Yeah.
I was just
Oh, yeah, and
trying to do something to alleviate the problem.
tires are getting more tread and the machines are getting more power, so.
Definitely, but I didn't know if you had anything to do with that, we kinda got off topic there, but,
And a lot of times, even the grant and aid trails don't go in the ditches, but the four-wheelers still go there. and
oh yes.
there needs to be a solution.
I'll move to approve.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes.
Second item is reviewing and approving the tree order quote for 2025 tree planting. We only got one quote back from PRT Inc. out of Michigan. $17,284.65. Prices haven't changed much, so I think that's a pretty good price for the amount of trees we're planting.
Corey, is the Norway pine, is that the white pine?
What's that?
Norway pine, is that white
Red
pine?
pine.
Red
No,
pine?
yep, red pine, yep.
And then after the fee sheet, do you have trouble with people going out and cutting the tops of young trees, or,
We've had trouble with people cutting branches, not exactly tops.
okay,
There's a market for black spruce tops. You'll see them in the pots by the stores and people's houses, but we don't have a much
okay,
a big supply of black spruce, so we don't have them issues too much around here.
Okay. I'll move to approve.
How many acres is that gonna cover?
I don't know exactly. I'd have to go check, but
What kind of spacing do they?
usually we do about 800 trees per acre. So yeah, you can do the math, but it's usually about 800 trees per acre.
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes.
The third item is to review and approve a rock raking quote to prepare a 25-acre log site for planting in the spring of 2024. The site was affected by the blowdown in 2022. There's root wads and stumps and slash all over the site from the blowdown. This rock raking it's a rake on the front of a dozer that they push the stumps and slash into a row to expose the bare soil for planting. So it's just instead of disc trenching, which you've all heard of, it's another option that we can use with more heavy slash and roots. The disc trenching doesn't quite do the job in the root wads. So this is just the one 25-acre site that we'll be doing hopefully starting here in the next couple weeks. And Gladens were the quote that we chose with the low quote amount. And we've had them do projects before and they do a good job, so we suggest using them. And the funds again will be used out of our forest development account for this project.
Do you burn the pile when it's done, or you just let it be?
For this site, we'll probably let it be. It's gonna be more of a windrow. It's with the blowdown, it's more of a challenge when you have root wads all over. So it'll be more of a windrow site.
I'm curious about this. I use a rock rake when seeding a new field, plowing it up and everything. And then
Sure.
raking so I'm imagining it's gotta be a different rock rake.
It's on a big dozer. It's almost like a blade with a bunch of spikes on it.
Okay.
And then they just use that to expose the bare soil to make it open to plant,
Okay.
pretty much.
I don't know if I'd be available at the time when they're doing it, but if you could kind of
Yeah, we
let
could.
me know. I'm curious
Uh-huh.
about it, so like I say, if I have time, I'd like to check it out.
Sure. I believe the site's in Clover Township
Yeah.
by Wabashish Lake up there. So,
Okay.
yeah, we can keep in touch. So.
Is that kind of like have a rakes on it to where you're not pushing soil up, you're just moving?
Yep, you're just moving the slash and the roots.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen some windrows with a lot of soil in them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. No, and one of our the natural resource employees is pretty familiar with this, so he'll be making sure that things are going correctly.
So Corey, 40 years from now, what kind of revenue would that 25-acre site generate?
Though with red pine, I mean, you can thin out red pine 4 or 5 times in its lifetime and make pretty good revenue. And 25 acres, the first thinning, you'll get 10 cords per acre so 250 cords at $40 or $50 a cord. Yeah, you'll make good revenue through the lifespan of the pine. It's definitely a worthwhile cost in the long run. Mm-hmm.
I'll make a motion to approve the low quote of number 1.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second.
Oops, go ahead. Okay, we got first and second, and then any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Have a good week.
Yeah, you too. Josh?
Good morning. All right, I have a few things for you this morning. So the first item I have is to review and approve change order number 1 for the South Landfill project. So during construction of the landfill cover project that we worked on this fall, there are several changes and bid alternatives that were needed with the project, and they were all grouped together into this change order number 1. It included a lot of information in your packet, and so the original contract price was $568,800, and this change order would increase that by $83,586.44. Kind of going through this change order a little bit, there was, I guess, 9 items that impacted this change order, and to kind of summarize what was done or what was the reason for the change order. The first item in that change order was actually a reduction, and we were able to utilize a lot of on-site soils for the project, which was a reduction in the overall price. And kind of looking at what drove some of the costs up. Number 3, when we first started construction, we realized we had some waste that was outside of the permitted waste boundary. So we had to take and remove that soil, bring it back within the permitted waste boundary. And that was all costs that weren't anticipated for. And that kind of is shown in number 3, and then also in impacts a lot of the other changes, like in change number 2 and number 5. By relocating that waste and also taking in additional waste at the landfill, we were able to close an additional 16,218 square feet of landfill area, which was good. We were able, we had the material to do that and had the cover material liner to do that. So that was one of the big changes in the contract price. And the other major change in the contract price was with, we didn't have enough soil on site is what our engineers originally thought. So we had to take and import the topsoil layer. We were originally going to do 6 inches of topsoil, and we had changed that to 12 inches of topsoil to get a better rooting zone and a better end product. So that impacted the price, and that was one of the other big change orders. And then kind of the other ones were a little bit more minor change orders that were just a reflection of kind of that work. We had to use more soil on site. They had to dig a little bit deeper to get that good soil, and that kind of increased how much turf they had to reestablish, and we had some changes to our seeding specs. So several things, different changes that went on, and that's kind of, I guess, how we got up with that $83,000 change order. So
I didn't see in here, I might have just missed it. Do you have money, or are you using money that you budgeted next year for the increase?
So this original project, we were under, when we bid this project, we were like, I think 100,000 or so under the engineer's estimate.
Okay.
So of course, it's not as nice that we had this change order to kind of bite into that, but we were already
So you had the funds to,
planning for the change order, or not planning, but we had the funds for it, but.
The funds were allocated out of capital dollars
okay,
for this project, and it'll be paid back over 3 years.
okay, thank you.
And with 4 years, and with the change order, it's still within what the expected parameters were in the '23 budget.
Okay, thanks.
So Josh, I'm assuming with this, the cover grasses and stuff like that'll grow, I'm assuming we wouldn't want trees to grow, or maybe trees couldn't grow because the roots couldn't penetrate the membrane?
Yeah, so we had to, actually, one of our changes was we had to change our seeding spec to get a plants with a shallower root base so it doesn't impact that membrane. We, based on the state requirements for post-closure care with our permit, we have to manage it so trees cannot grow at least over the 20 years after the closure, so.
I'm assuming any chemical spraying or something if trees.
Well, we have to mow it, we're required to mow it
That
annually
looks
or
even
twice a
better.
year, so.
Thank you.
more questions?
Why the decision to go with 12 inches of cover instead of 6? Was there some requirement, or was it just?
I think it was, kind of came down to the, what was gonna be needed to get that soil to grow. And then also just, we didn't have the soil on site to be able to, use the on-site material for that. So we were gonna have to import it. And, importing the topsoil, I think, made the most sense versus importing drainage sand, so.
Did we utilize the compost that's at the?
Yeah, all the topsoil was mixed
Okay.
50/50 with the compost, so we utilized, we might have probably less than 1,000 yards of this year's compost pile out there, so we utilized probably
Majority.
about 3,500 yards compost, so.
That's a pretty fair, just a side thing, that's a pretty fair chunk to mow. How is that gonna be handled? Is the highway department gonna mow with one of their ditch mowing tractors, or what's?
We haven't really figured that out yet. I mean, that's probably my intention, is to see if the highway department would have the availability to do that to start with. And then I think as we close more of our landfill, then it's probably looking at us maybe getting a piece of equipment, or if there's some contracts we can do to get that work done, but.
Would set and to serve be an option?
Well, I think we'd be looking at more, tractor and mower, not lawnmower, so.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
So Josh, I had a resident ask me this question, and I'm curious to see if I answered it correctly. But as this is closed, I told them that they would still be able to deliver stuff there and it'll be trucked out, is that correct?
Well, so we were able to close about, I think it's right around 4.5 acres. So we still have,
Right, but they were asking eventually when it's all closed,
yeah, that's the plan, with our 9-county study right now, is we'd end up pretty much adding on to our transfer station to transfer out construction and demolition waste
Oh,
to
good.
wherever the
That's what I
landfill
said.
is, so.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
All right,
I'll second.
second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes.
All right, and the second item was to review and approve the final payment for the Hubbard County South Demolition Partial Closure Project. So this project was substantially completed on October 23rd. And T&T Construction Group met all the requirements and were verified by our engineer Stantec. And the final retainage is proposed to be lowered from 5% to 2.5% as allowed per the contract until all contract requirements are satisfied. So my recommendation would be to approve the final payment minus retainage to T&T Construction Group out of Grand Rapids for $636,076.77, and to authorize the Solid Waste Administrator to sign any necessary documents. Everything was kind of, I think, laid out and had a lot of attachments in your packet that kind of just go through all the bid specs, and also had the recommendation to pay this from Stantec as well. So I guess if anyone has any specific questions, I can try to answer them.
So basically then, of course, we're holding back the retainage there of 2.5%, and it's basically done, so what's got to be buttoned up?
So the only punch list items next spring are pretty much just related to making sure the vegetation's established in the spring. So there's just a punch list item to make sure that's done. Once that's verified that, everything's coming up and we don't have major erosion issues, and they would put the paperwork in to release that retainage, so.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. I'll second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes.
I think overall, we were really happy with T&T Construction Group. I think they did really well and were able to stay on and are ahead of schedule, and hopefully everything comes up well in the spring and we'll be have the first phase completed, so. All right, the next few items I have are just our annual recycling contracts. We go out and ask for quotes every year on a few of these contracts. So the first one we have is to review and approve quotes for 2024 electronics recycling. Like I mentioned, annually we solicit proposals for recycling of certain materials such as waste tires, electronics, scrap metal batteries, fluorescent tubes. And these are sent to specific recycling companies in the area, and including the region and multi-state region. And notices are also published in our county newspaper. This year for our electronics recycling, or e-waste, we received 2 quotes. And to compare these quotes, I utilized the data, kind of all the electronics that we've shipped this calendar year, looking at the poundage of all the different material types, and kind of use that to generate what the estimate's going to be for the next calendar year. And a big portion of the electronics recycling is transportation costs, and so that's factored in to find the lowest responsible quote. In fiscal year, the state operates on fiscal years for our reporting. So from July 2022 to June 2023, we recycled approximately 102 tons of e-waste from our transfer stations. In our 2 quotes this year were from Dynamic Life Cycle Innovations and Universal Recycling Technologies, or URT. And the low quote for 2024 is looking at that would be URT out of Janesville, Wisconsin. So the total estimated cost, and this can vary based on just how much material we take in, would be $9,700 for 2024 program costs. So my recommendation would be to award the quote to URT. And just kind of a side note is, and a good note, I guess, for a change, is the cost for us to recycle e-waste has really been coming down over the last few years. And I think that has somewhat to do with legislation that's went through to help offset these costs and put more of the costs back on the manufacturers for these products. But really, looking at 2024, our expected cost is going to be $9,700. Looking at 2023, our cost is looking at probably going to be around $21,000. Last year we were probably around $40,000, and the year before that we were around $50,000. So it's kind of been coming down as these manufacturers are able to either give us a rebate and pay us for some of these materials to be recycled, or the cost of disposal or recycling that they're charging is going down. So I think that was good on this front anyway. But my recommendation is to award the low quote of URT for recycling e-waste in 2024.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the low quote number 2.
Okay.
I'll second it. Josh, have we ever used URT before?
Yeah, so actually this year was we're using Dynamic right now. This was our first year using them. Previously, for long into the past, we've used URTs. So both of the companies are very easy to work with. So
Do they supply a truck for dumping the stuff in while you're gathering it?
So we load everything into Gaylords and on pallets, and then they'll coordinate and supply the semi-trailer that we'll load. So this does include them providing the transportation to get to their facilities. So.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes.
All right, the second item I have is with our scrap metal recycling for 2024. So for recycling scrap metal, we received 1 quote for recycling scrap metal in 2024 from Crowing Recycling of Brainerd. This includes appliances, car batteries, propane cylinders, and scrap metal collected at both of our county transfer stations. In 2022, we recycled approximately 1,357 tons of scrap metal and appliances, and over 31 tons of batteries from our facilities. In the quote this year, we are looking at a price paid to the county of $84 per ton for scrap metal and appliances, and a price paid to the county for batteries of 10 cents per pound, and no charge for propane tanks. And looking historically, Crow Wing Recycling's typically the only one we're able to get a quote from. And this year, 2023, our price was $61 a ton, so we'd be coming up a little bit from that. In 2022, we were at $101 per ton, so, still a little bit down from that, but at least it's going in the right direction, I guess, this year, so.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion?
So Josh, let's see, the electronics we pay and the others, they pay us.
The electronics is kind of it's all across the board. Electronics, some of the items we pay for, some of them they pay us. Like there's a market where we get paid for laptops, but for your big old tube TVs, we're paying, to
And
get
that's
rid of
what the
them.
quote is for, okay.
Yep, on that
Right.
one, yep. But the scrap metal price, for scrap metal on this contract, everything is paid to the county, so.
Thank you.
Is there a difference in price between a load that's nothing but pure scrap metal, or one that they gotta do some separating of plastics and stuff like that?
How we have it set up is just everything that we take in our scrap metal pile, so it's not sorted, any more than, really what comes in there. We don't sort out different types of metal or, things like that, so.
Okay, just curious. Okay, did we get a motion and a second on that one?
Yeah, we just
Okay.
didn't vote yet.
Yeah, didn't vote yet. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, and the third one I have is for waste tire recycling for 2024. Typically, we've been doing this on 2-year contracts, so, which I think helps us to get a little bit more favorable pricing. When we last bid this in 2022, our contract price was $287.50. For this next contract, they're quoting a price of $307.50, and again, this is what we pay to have the tires recycled. In 2022, we recycled about 233 tons of waste tires from our transfer stations. And really the only quote, there's really not much of a market for waste tires. There's kind of 2 in the state. We typically only get the 1 quote, and which was from Liberty Tire Recycling out of Savage, Minnesota. And again, their quote was $307.50 for either a 1 to 2 year contract. You can see on the bottom, historically, or going back since 2017, we used to pay $185 a ton. Then the contract after that, it went to $230. The one after that, $287.50, and now we're up to $307.50. So this is one that is unfortunate how much it keeps going up, but we really don't have any other options at this point. So my recommendation would be to approve the quote from Liberty Tire for recycling tires.
Have we been keeping up on the fee schedule with this?
Yep.
It says 1 to 2 year contract, so is it a 2-year contract, or is it after a year we have an option, or?
I guess if we wanted to maybe have it in the motion, I would recommend doing a 2-year contract, just because these prices are continually increasing, so.
Yeah, it looks like history says it goes up all the time, so.
And I think regionally, with our 9-county group and we're hoping to maybe have a beneficial reuse or a different thing we can do with tires in the future, so, just none of that's kind of lined up yet, but hopefully, in the future, we'll have something where we can bring this cost way down, but.
Weren't they talking about recycling it for roads or something, putting it in the hot mix?
There's different options you can do with it. It creates a lightweight aggregate where you could use putting in bases of roads and things like that. So for different projects, or there could be an option for, our highway departments or whatever to use locally, so.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the number one, the only quote.
The one and only.
For 2-year contract?
Yeah, for a 2-year contract. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, and that's all I had, unless anyone had any questions, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, same to you. Scott?
Long time no see.
Yeah. Good morning.
Morning. So I think we only have one thing on the agenda, and that's recommending approval for a law enforcement services agreement with the city of Nevis, between the city of Nevis and the sheriff's office. It's a 3-year contract, been reviewed by legal on both sides. It's a 5% increase from 2023 to 2024, and then 5% for the following 2 years after that, so 5% per year for the length of the contract. It's been this relationship with the city of Nevis has been a very positive relationship for our office, and I believe the city of Nevis would agree, mutually beneficial on both sides. The one thing I do want to point out is obviously we had the discussion with the city this year about increasing costs and rising costs. So historically, this contract has renewed at 3% per year annually, and this year this contract, we did bump it up to 5% per year. I'm trying to absorb some of those rising costs. So, I guess with that being said, I would just recommend that we approve this contract for 3 years. If there's any questions, take those.
How does that work? Is there a deputy always in the city, or is it just they go by every so often, or?
We do have a deputy assigned to the contract, and the deputy's primary responsibility is providing services for the city of Nevis.
Okay.
There is some flexibility written into the contract where if we have calls in the surrounding area, that deputy can respond to those calls as well, so.
Okay. And I was kind of curious about that. So somebody in the city of Nevis needs law enforcement, they call 911, and it goes to our dispatch, and then they dispatch it to that deputy. And
Yeah, if that deputy's on duty, and then obviously during the off-duty times, we would just respond as the sheriff's office into the city and handle those calls as well.
okay, thank you.
How long have they been without their own law enforcement?
Gosh, I want to say it's maybe 10 or 12 years.
It's been quite a while. It really has.
I just haven't paid attention because I don't actually live in Nevis, but I remember seeing a car with Nevis police on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just venturing a guess, but I want to say it's maybe 12 years that it's been.
It's somewhere right around there, 10 to 12, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good day.
Assessor.
Thank you for,
You bearing good news this year?
but
I don't know.
your report was very helpful, so thank you for writing that up.
You're welcome. I had some help because I'm all about numbers, and then sometimes numbers aren't English, so I needed some help with the English part of it, but we got it, so. So first item on the agenda is we need to sign a contract between us and, it's Lauren Tolkinen, but he has his business name. So basically backstory on this is, Nevis Township contracts with Hubbard County to do their local assessing. This will be our second 5-year term, I guess, so we've done it for the last 5 years, and it's worked out well. So when their previous local assessor was up for, or he retired or quit, or however you want to say it, they contacted us and asked us if we would take on the contract. They had some issues with their previous local getting their work done, so they wound up paying the local and paying the county to come in and finish the work. So they figured it's easier just to contract with us to get the work done, so then if we don't get the work done, we can't charge them more type of thing. So the first contract we already have the contract with Nevis Township. This is just finalizing us paying the local assessor to actually doing it. So we are subcontracting it out just because we don't have the manpower to be able to do it right now. There is no obligation to the county. Nevis Township pays the entire contract amount, so we send them an invoice, they send us a check that we then turn around and pay the subcontractor. So it's more of a formality, I guess, but just so you guys are aware of the contracts that we're in. I just need it to be approved.
Is it standard, the increases, is that just a standard increase?
Typically, I believe it's like a 3% every year, and so most locals do their own negotiating, but Steve, you've seen some local, I would guess 3% is pretty typical.
Typically, yes, and they'd like to have that 5-year contract so that
Yes.
they,
It helps them plan out work so that they know what they have
so
for
they can
income
get
for
the
the next.
quintile done and get
Yeah.
it done on time.
Yep, so they know that they have, the next 5 years of work lined up type of thing. But, yeah, I feel like a 3% is pretty normal. And Nevis, like I said, they've already agreed to these terms. It's literally the exact same thing. We just had to change the wording. And Jonathan, county attorney, also, I had him look at this contract before I had Mr. Tolkien sign it, just to make sure that he was okay with the language in it. So,
We've had Lauren in Arago Township for years and years.
Yep.
And very efficient, has his work done on time. I'll make a motion to approve.
perfect.
I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, so next thing is pretty much just wanted to give you guys kind of a heads up on where the county is sitting. This is really early in it. I'm still trying to look at the sales and stuff and figure out how are we actually going to get to where we need to be, trying to think outside the box this year instead of just doing blanket rate increases. So just kind of giving you a heads up on where we're at. We are sitting fairly good for improved properties, so your seasonal and residential properties at, just over 90%. We obviously will need to increase that. However, in past years, we were in the 80s and low, so that one's pretty good. Our bare land, though, we are very low on large tracts of land and even small tracts of land. We're in the 70s on land. So just in general, land is going to see some pretty big increases, whether it's rural vacant land or agricultural land as well. So I gave you the quick summary of, you guys can see that countywide overview. We do have a few lakes that are going to need to go up. Long Lake is on there again. So, and Beltane is another one. Beltane is probably one of our worst, just with the number of sales we had and the prices that people are paying to be on Beltane. We did have some time trends again this year. If you guys remember in the past though, and I believe it's in the summary, but time trends have gone down drastically in the last 2 years, which we appreciate. So 2 years ago, we were on average probably about a 25% time trend. It went to an average of about 15 last year, and we're at an average of about 6 for this year. So that's pretty good. The one time trend that we haven't had, and since as far as I can remember, there is a time trend on that bare land and agricultural land. So that's kind of new and different this year, but which is not helping our ratios any. But and then on the third page of that summary sheet, just kind of gives you a breakdown of every township, just so you guys can see, the townships that you guys look over, you can kind of see where they're at.
So I had a question on that. So the ones that are like, I'm looking at Bedore, 125%. So then will you look to make an adjustment to lower?
Yeah, so typically 2 sales is kind of hard. So there are some districts that have 1 or 2 sales. 2 sales tells me that we are high on it. However, 2 sales isn't a really big sampling. So a lot of times I would probably look back to a 3-year sales study to see what's the pattern. Like were we really low and now we're really high? But typically my guess is that we would need to back off a little bit. They're both on water sales, so that's kind of easier with where you can affect just that lake versus maybe all of the bare land and the thing. So
And if you look at Arago, there was 11 on water and a combined 20, so that's
a pretty good
high.
yeah.
So it's at 101 and 100%, so would you just leave that as is?
I personally would probably back off a little bit. 100%, I get that that's what we're shooting for, but I hate the yo-yo effect either, so I don't want to go too far down. 101 is probably pushing where I would want to be at. I would look at what lake are we on? If it's all one lake, and I believe in this district it is, they're all on island. And so I think we probably need to adjust island a little bit, just quickly looking at it. So I probably would still adjust it. We're in compliance, but it's on the higher end. If you have some lakes that are at like 92, 93, it's probably not, in my opinion, we shouldn't be leaving lakes at like 101, 102%. So I more than likely would try to adjust those just so that they're more in line with other lakes of that size and different things like that. So there's a couple areas like Lake Emma Township, we know we have to come down on there. We're at 102 combined, and then, 103 on either side of it. So Lake Emma's gonna have to come down some too. So not every district is gonna probably see big increases, but so we'll have to adjust them as they go. The other thing, just for you guys' information, is that if you guys will remember last year with this, the conversion values were a little bit out of whack. These rates that I provided you are ones that I calculated, because these are going against the non-conversion values. So we did get our study from the Department of Revenue that told me what our ratios are. Unfortunately, I didn't give them to you because they don't mean anything, only because those values are based off of incorrect values, I guess, because they still had that conversion piece in them. So I basically looked at every property without the conversion on it, what would our new sales ratios be, and that's what the numbers are here. These are the ones that we'll probably share with the public, just because it doesn't make sense to share the other ones. It's not mathematically gonna make sense. If you're like, we were at 95, we went up 5%, and now we're at 92. People are gonna be like, what are you talking about? So, but we were, in general, we probably dropped about 4 to 5% from what the state told me to this, so.
Well, with these
It can make a
being
difference.
updated every year, how does, like land greater than 34 acres, how does that get all the way down to 70% ratio
It's the market,
in 1 year? In 1 year it'll do that?
yep. There's no houses to buy right now, so if you look at, like our smaller tracts of land, which on your, sheet is the PT 96s. So those are like your small building sites, on water, off water. We had 101 sales, which is quite a few smaller tracts of land sell, and we're at 78%. People are building, and so land has been nuts. It's been crazy what we're seeing. Like, we are off on almost every land sale that we see. And everyone saw that. We went up quite a bit last year. But yeah, in 1 year, that's what's happening. There's the improvements, there's not a lot out there, and so people now are buying the land. And that's not just with us. Most counties of our surrounding, we probably had the lowest time trend for bare land in our surrounding area. I believe Cass is at 25%. Some of them were up in the 30s. It's all in our region. Everyone's bare land this year had a time trend, which is not very common.
Did the sale of any of potlatch land to the conservative fund influence that any?
It can. So potlatch sales previously, probably when I first started in the assessor department, so potlatch sales used to be an automatic reject just because they felt that it wasn't a true indication of what the market is. Now potlatch is selling so much, it's becoming the market. And so for the last probably 5+ years, those aren't automatically rejected anymore. Sometimes you can reject them if you know that there is some inside, like they got a really good deal on it based on some stuff. But for when that's the most of your market, potlatch sales can make a difference. We try to argue some of those, like with all of the stuff going into the conservation, people are paying a lot of money for them. But we also have sales that aren't going into a conservatorship that are paying the same amount per acre. So it's hard to argue that this isn't a good sale and argue that this one is a good sale. So yeah, it can make a difference.
But you can argue that, the private landowner seeing their values just going up and taxes, it doesn't seem very fair to them just because this money's being sold in the public land. Eventually, as public land, it becomes.
The good news with that conservatorship sale is it's one sale. They sold all of those acres on like one ECRV, so it's not like you have 15 or 20 of them. It's one sale out of, 33. So yeah, it can make a difference, but if it's your extreme outlier, it's not gonna matter. That's why we look at those median sales, is because you're gonna have weird ones on either side of them. People got really good deals, or they're willing to pay anything to get it. That's why the median sale is the best ratio to look at. But in most parts, there's been a lot of private sales too, not necessarily with potlatch sales. There's been a lot of land sales, and they're just paying ridiculous amounts of money for land right now.
Okay.
So, and I can get you more information on those if you actually want to see a list of what the sales are. I can get that to you, Tom, if you want to look at it, so.
Yeah, I'd be curious what the differences are between potlatch to conservative fund and private to private.
And I actually think the conservative fund paid more per acre. But there's 2 or 3 private sales that I can think of in Henrietta Township that they paid like $3,000, $3,500 an acre. And it was like 100 and some acres. Like it was, I mean, it's crazy. On average, I just went to my land meeting on Friday where we meet with our region to talk about like what land is doing. And I think on average, our sale price per acre was like $3,800, which.
So is it out of the area, people coming in and buying?
Not the few sales that I can think of right off the top of my head, they're local people.
So people are paying high land prices, plus it's really expensive to build, so.
Yeah, building prices actually are starting to come back down, we noticed. The cost of things is coming down. The sale prices have not come down. It's still very much an appreciating market. Just from, you can see, we've done pretty major increases the last couple of years, so to still not be in compliance starting out. But I'm happy with where we're starting compared to where we are in the last couple of years. I think they're gonna be a lot less drastic increases. But we still are not seeing that slowing down yet that maybe some other metro areas are seeing, so.
Yeah, I know when Potlatch sold their 78,000 acres or whatever, in Minnesota, I know I kinda done just a simple math, and it was like $800 an acre they were paying. And as I recall, Hubbard County has bought some for like $1,635 an acre.
Yep.
In that range. And then I can't think of anything where it's being under $2,000 an acre. It's usually over that. So how does that then factor in? Are you using those figures?
Yep, so it's a little hard, so when you look at our large tracts of land, 2 of them are just bare land, and then 1 of them also includes improvements. So the improvement side of it's a little harder. You can't just do a straight, here's what you paid per acre, because if there's a house on it, that value is still getting lumped into it. But on the other stuff, I broke it down, this is a spreadsheet I didn't give you guys, but, so every sale, I broke it down with what land type is on that property. So I know if it's high ground, low ground, is it wetlands, is it pasture, is it woods, what is it? Trying to see what can we affect to get those values up, like what's actually selling for more versus just raising all bare land by 30%. So trying to fine tune it a little bit to look at that, but we do look at the price per acre. I was actually really surprised at what people are paying, just when I did the simple math for our land meeting. That's way higher than it used to be in previous years. And so, you know how we value land, that 3rd tier, our excess tiering is gonna have to go up in most districts, just because that's what's gonna affect these larger tracts of land the most. It doesn't make sense to necessarily increase the building site a lot, because it's 1 acre, it's not, so you can increase it by $5,000, it's gonna increase it by 5,000, versus if you do $200 an acre and you have 100 acres, you're gonna get more bang for your buck that way. So it's still trying to think outside the box, it's not as simple, but we're definitely looking at what actually is being valued on the property to know where can we divide this out and figure out the best way to be as equitable as possible. So it's not just everyone's getting an increase, but what actually is selling. But, yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll get more details for you once I actually kind of know what we're doing. I have some ideas. We're making some changes to depreciation schedules and a bunch of stuff, but I figured that's maybe a little bit more in depth than we want to go on this preliminary one, so. Once I have more information, I can kind of give you guys updates as you want them. I can let you know where we're at. I'm gonna start probably, I'm starting next week looking at them, trying to start setting rates, and I'm gonna start with land, so that's gonna be my first spot. So,
Thank you very much.
yeah,
I've got one more thing.
Yeah.
If you've got time.
absolutely.
Was at the Hubbard County Township Association meeting last night. Some people in attendance, of course, had just gotten their notices.
Their
for this-
TNTs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll start with the friendliest guy from Henrietta Township. He had a question. Obviously he's at the Township Association meeting, so he's a township supervisor.
Okay.
He knows that their township levy didn't increase that much, if at all. I can't remember exactly what percentage he was talking about, but he said that on his statement, his township tax doubled. And he was wondering, how did that happen when nothing else really changed? And I told him I didn't have an answer for him, but I told him that I would talk to you, just mention it to you.
Okay.
Had another gentleman that has multiple parcels in one area. He said one went up 70%, one went up 40%, and another one didn't go up at all, and he's wondering
Tax-wise or value-wise?
tax-wise.
Okay.
So he's wondering about the differences, and there again, I told him, not knowing the particulars, I, of course, told him he should talk to our assessor's office, I'm sure they have the answers. And then you left at the end there and missed out the guy swearing at me a whole bunch, but
Oh.
it was fun. He's, of course, thinks he's some computer expert, and it's because of the conversion stuff. And he's thinking that we should be looking at that program to make sure that it's not making more mistakes. And I told him, I said, I'm sure that Maria's aware of that. I said, but I will pass it on.
Yeah.
So that, I looked at mine when I got home, I was okay. There's,
So,
small increases in that, but that's expected.
Yeah, so without knowing the particulars, and I can absolutely look at them, I'm no tax expert. I know enough to be dangerous, maybe not helpful, but I have some ideas. So the Henrietta Township one, so last year there were some differences on different school districts. So for my understanding, Park Rapids City School District was fine. The other ones had some errors in them. So you underpaid last year and you're going to double pay this year. I know Cass Lake School District, they're seeing very large increases. One gentleman called us and his taxes went up by $2,000, and it was because of the school portion on it, because he's having to pay for last year and this year. So that would be one. In Henrietta, there are multiple school districts, so that could be part of it. The county portion going up, that one sounds a little different. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me. So I can, if you have parcel numbers or addresses, I can absolutely look at them.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Like I said,
If they have questions about their tax, they really should be talking to Kay.
okay.
Yes.
Tax-wise, probably K. If it's question on the
Maria's really only
values.
dealing with the values.
And
There's a
classifications.
real hard split on those two things.
Okay.
And yes, Maria has that general information. I wouldn't even offer that. I would refer you to Kay.
Okay.
Because the rates are set in her office, by her office.
Yeah.
And the calculations are done in that office between there and the state. So I know they always run together, but she's dealing with market value, appraised value, county value, and then that goes through the rate calculator from the city, or from the state, and ends up coming up as taxes for all the different authorities.
Okay.
So, some of those, Kay can speak to, some of them she can't because they're set by other local taxing authorities, right? So, and people typically run all of those tax values together and put them on the county. If it was a school district, if it was, if it was in Henrietta Township and it went up this much, did it go because the township went up? Probably not. There's probably another explanation for it. But if they have questions about their tax statement, those should be coming to Kay.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Then the other general thing I would say, which I agree with Jeff, but the only other thing is when you have parcels, like one doesn't change and the other ones do change. The only thing I can think of is our new software, when you have an agricultural homestead and there's egg credits used to be applied to multiple parcels. Now with the new system, they apply it all to the first parcel. So the other ones could be going up, but it's because this one went down, so there could just be a shift in taxes. Just like exemptions used to be on multiple parcels, where now all of the exemption goes on the primary parcel. So you're gonna see that the primary went down, but your other one went up, but in total, it maybe didn't change. So those are a couple of little things that can affect people's taxes. Classification could have changed too, I suppose. So there's a lot of different reasons why people's taxes can go up if the value didn't necessarily change. But school district that I know, that's a huge one this year, so.
And also remember that everything Maria just told you about the values and where we're starting from the sales study will be for the 24 valuation for the 25 tax year, right? So right now, when those statements are coming out, those statements for 24 taxes were the conversations that we had this spring from February through June about the valuation notices that came out last spring.
And they saw bigger increases last year, and different things like that, so.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for going to that meeting.
You're welcome.
Looks like you had your turn and taken the heat for it.
People are always so nice to us when they call. I don't know why they're upset with you. So,
Well, thank you, Marie.
yeah. Do you want me to stay up here or go?
Yeah,
away?
sure,
Okay.
please. So the first item I have is a topic we've talked about a couple of times. We talked about it, I don't know, was it the November or the October work session? I think it was October. And this is coming to you for your approval on the combination of the assessor and recorder's office into a new property records office. You can see the old org chart and the new org chart on the back. You can see the list of the job titles that'll be eliminated and the positions that were created. And what I can't tell you right now, I can tell you what position each of the employees were recommending they go into. And I would like to, I can tell you where I'm recommending they move for, as far as a step, so their actual dollar amount and pay. But there's a bit in the contract with the ASME group. And our recommendation for pay, we're considering this a promotion. And their contract wouldn't consider it a promotion, so our placement is more generous than what the contract allows. So I'm asking you to approve the mechanics of the organizational combination of the two departments. And then administratively, we'll apply the classification and the compensation amounts to that. What I will tell you is what I told you in the front, that if we didn't do this, we were looking at adding a new position, thereby having 11 people to staff the two departments, which would have been a cost of $80,000 or $85,000, depending on which position we had to fill. Based on my recommendation of step placements, I estimate the amount is $32,000, and I had originally told you I thought it would be about half, so it's a little less than half. To do this, to put people in these new positions, you can't really see the correlation here, but almost all of these new positions are a grade or two higher than the positions that they're replacing, because we're adding to the complexity of the work that everybody in this department is doing. Everyone's gonna have to be able to do work across both departments. The staff in the recorder's office that are affected by this still have the opportunity to opt out and stay where they are. If they do, that's fine. If we have a vacancy, we will fill based on the new positions and not into the old positions. So we've had conversations with the staff in a group. Maria and Lauren have had have conversations with staff individually, and it generally has good support. There's always questions about change. But we are doing this from our perspective, administratively, making the recommendation to be more efficient, to not have to add cost and FTE to provide these services, and to provide more efficient services at the window, to not have to tell the public coming to the window, well, you go to this window to do this, and then you take the same form and you step back out and you go to line over here and you hand it to this window and do that with the same form. Now they can process almost all the way through on a lot of these transactions with staff that are trained to handle both parts of that. And it'll be 6 to 9 months training up to get people into the point where that actually happens, but our hope is to get everything ready, and as soon as we clear the issue with the wages, I understand that they're having a meeting on December 5th. Our next meeting isn't until the 12th, and I don't want to push this back so far. I want to give HR an opportunity to move as soon as we get the approval to move forward.
So Ted and I have been part of a more lengthy discussion in personnel. And one thing I really like about this is, we talked about this a few years ago, how can we best serve the public? And if that's a combination of departments, that's a good move. The other thing I like about this is, a lot of times jobs here are stagnant. There isn't room to grow and there isn't room to move up. And this gives the employees a chance, not only to move up, but to learn new things, which results in better customer service.
Maria, the staff is okay with this, or the majority of the staff?
Yeah, yep. I mean, change is hard,
Yeah.
and the unknown is hard, so I think with time, I think that's the biggest thing. It's gonna ease some of those concerns about just how is it gonna work, and, but I think given time, we'll get there.
And I know your departments have been working together already for years, so.
Correct. Yeah, it's just more of a formal setting, I think, just trying to feel that out and how does it work, but, I'm confident Lauren and we work together very well, and so I know we can make it a success, so. Yep.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, this idea came from Lauren and Maria, and we've been working on it since July, so.
Are you looking for a motion today?
I'm actually looking for a motion to approve the organizational changes.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any more questions? Notice parcel maintenance, passports or vital records. Is the window down there for passports, that's still, is that under the auditors, or is that?
The passports have always housed in the assessor's office.
Assessors? Oh, okay.
So we have it on there because depending on who needs more help, you can't do passports and vital records by state law. You can't create birth records, so people that are already doing birth and death records will stay doing it, people that are doing passports will stay doing passports. But if we hire a new person, then we'll figure out, do we need more help on the vital side, or do we need more help on the passport side? So that's why we said either or. The training and that kind of stuff is very relatively the same. So.
And these values that you gave, Jeff, that's the 2024 budget values?
I think those are.
That's in current dollar. Which value?
80,000 plus for a new position, 32,000 cost.
Yeah, those are in current dollars. But again, the $80,000 is really hard to figure because we don't know which position we'd actually be hiring for. It's probably closer to 75, and in the 24, then that would be 78 or so. But the 32 is in this year's dollars. So 32 and 4% would
Okay.
be.
What I'm wondering, is the 2024 budget that we have been working on for the last several months, that will accommodate this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as I mentioned last week when we talked about getting the levy down to $20.2 million, we're balancing that by planning to use approximately $50,000 of fund balance. If that number changes $10,000 or $15,000, it doesn't change anything. If it gets beyond that, then we'll have to look for additional adjustments. So I'm not intending for any of these changes that we're talking about to come back and saying, I changed my mind, we want to go from 20.2 up again. We're down to 20.2 and doing what we can with that. We have sufficient fund balances to make an intentional use of $50,000 or $100,000 worth of fund balance a completely reasonable choice.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm glad you explained it, because did the preliminary at 6.8, and then we've been talking about 5.8, and now that's kind of setting into my mind, and that's where we need to be, and I don't want, I personally don't want to change that.
I won't go up from there. The only thing we can do is come down from that number.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Awesome, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Maria. Then my original item, 10A, is we just need to set the date for the public hearing for the fee schedule. And we've typically done this during our last meeting of the year, so I'm asking for a motion to set the date for a public hearing for the Hubbard County fee schedule for 2024 at 9:30 on December 19th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
And then the next item, I'm not sure if you have any questions on this, but I had a conversation with the media person for North Ambulance, and they are asking us to submit a letter of support for their application to go with a part-time ALS license instead of a full-time ALS license. And what that would allow them to do is occasionally, if they don't have the staff, an ALS is advanced life support and BLS is basic life support. And the difference is ALS always has a medic in the van, and a BLS can run with EMTs as the highest classified. If they have a full-time ALS license and they can't cover a shift that has a paramedic in the truck, they're in violation of their license. So they're asking us to support the part-time so that they will occasionally, if they have to, staff a truck with EMT as the highest designation in the truck. Their intention is not to, but their intention is to not be in violation of their current license. So you have a letter here from them explaining that. You have a draft letter that I'm asking you to allow me to send on behalf of the county. This draft letter is the same form that the hospital sent, that Ben Koppelman sent on behalf of the hospital in full support of this. It makes sense. I was an EMT for 5 years, and I get how hard it is to staff these services. So that's what we're asking for. Is they're asking for authority to have me send this letter on behalf of the county.
I would consider adding one thing. I'd like to be able to actually get a report from them annually. You know, how often they don't have the paramedic on staff, because if that drops to a certain
Yep.
level, I think we have to be concerned about it then.
And he offered, I don't have his card or his name with me, but their relations staffer absolutely said, how often do you want me, you want to see me quarterly, you want to see me 6 months, do you want to see me annually? He'd be happy to come in front of the board and give that report.
So, you know, I'd be supportive of it, but I'd like to have you add that to the letter.
Yep, happy to do so.
That I don't know, what do we need how often do you think we need it?
I would think maybe start annually, or do we want to go more and then maybe change
Well,
it?
depending when it is, because it'd be kind of interesting, because you definitely want a paramedic on staff in the summer months.
Yeah.
So maybe every 6 months defining, you know, a report in May and a report.
Yeah, he
in
absolutely
December.
offered that. They would have, you could say periodic reporting, you could say 6 months. I mean, if we just put periodic reporting in the letter and then invite him to come 6 months, he'd be absolutely happy to do that.
I like that. I would second that.
be a motion.
That was a motion and a second? Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
And the next item I have is the Heritage Living Center ECPN program authorization. Hubbard County has participated in this. This is a situation where we put money in, and the state and the Medicare system matches that money. And actually, I think we put in 40 cents, they put in 60, something like that. When we look at the chart that's down here at the bottom, we'll be able to see that ratio. But the more money we put in up to the maximum, the more money they'll match. The more money we put in raises the rate not only for the Medicare pay patients, but for the private pay patients. So if you think about, I think we're currently at $11.26 per day is what we're paying, and then we're paying a flat fee based on the estimated number of days in that month. It's approximately $3,300 a month that we're paying. $3,100 a month. So we're getting $93,000 worth of revenue. We're paying 37, so we're getting a net of 55. And we could renew it. We don't have to participate. It's completely optional. We have always participated in this. This is only available to publicly owned nursing homes. This program is just for us. Then we also modeled two other numbers. That's at 1124, 1126 I'm not sure where the typo was, but it's not consequential. The max that we could raise it to is 2327. Now, if you took that $12 a day times 30 days, that's a $360 a month increase that we get on the Medicare patients from the Medicare program, but it'd be a $360 a month increase on the private pay as well. I think we got the numbers that were 75% Medicare and
20% private pay.
20%
Yeah,
private
just
pay?
took it out.
So I don't know if either of you want to talk any more about this. I'm just throwing it out there. Tomorrow's the deadline for them to submit this, so we do have to make a determination today. But the range is wide open between 0 and 2327. 1124, 1126 is this year's, so that would be continuing. To ask about the impact of the budget, I would provide the same answer that we had before. That if you increase the county payment from 37,000 to 57,000, or 37,000 to 78,000, the offsetting net that goes back to that will come back to the county in, right now the budget for Heritage Living Center shows they're not gonna make all their debt payments in '24. So the money we spend, we will get back in those increased payments. We'll spend it out of cash, we'll get it back from operations on Heritage. We end up making money. The more we put in, the more we get back. So that it doesn't have an impact on the budget. It actually only has a positive impact on the budget.
We're spending the money anyway, because we're covering the shortfalls. So actually, by doing this, we have to cover less. The only negative is the private pay people, that 20%, they could see their bills go up $360 a month roughly.
I don't want to see any private pay squeezed out.
So Angie from Canute Nelson has started to come to the meetings, and she's a wealth of information. And she said most private pay people run out of money. I mean, they just
Yeah.
do.
Oh,
It's
yes, they
too
do.
expensive.
Yep. Oh, surely.
So it doesn't mean they move out.
Mhm. It just transfers
It
to.
just
yeah,
transfers.
where the money comes from.
And
instead of
so
coming out
at
of
the
pocket.
executive board, we discussed, that the last one is probably too much. But rent is going up everywhere. And so maybe the 1726 would be a middle ground.
It's a midpoint between the current and the max.
And you can set any number in between.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one of these three.
And how much would that be per year for a private pay
So
increase?
1726, if we took this one, 1726 per day, so you take that times 365 days.
Yeah, but you make me do the math now, you don't have the math.
$1,500,
Huh?
$1,600.
$1,600 a year more?
It's actually easier to look at the monthly rate. $5 times 30 days, it'd be $150 a month.
$150.
So it'd be $1,800 for the, or
Okay. And that'll help Heritage bottom line too then,
$84,000 if you
Yeah.
take the metal one.
yeah.
And
Well-
the high one would be about $350 more a month.
Yeah, well, my thought has been that, prices are going up, it's certainly reasonable to raise the prices on this, but you don't wanna get it too much of a raise, so you came up with that 17.
that maximum number changes every year based on performance factors, and I have those reports. Stephanie sent them out. Last year's maximum was $39, and it's just because of the usage and the figures, and so the fact that it came down
It was 43.91.
was last year's max? Okay.
So when you analyze it, for me anyhow, it really comes down to, while we have a real small percentage of private pay, do you want to go to that high level or not? Because it will impact the private pay some, but it also impacts the county as a whole quite significantly too. You're talking a difference of $30,000.
Yeah, we have a net at the midpoint of an additional of $30,000 less loss on that, which covers the additional cost we have and then $30,000 more towards operation.
I'd like to see it.
30,000 less for the county or
Yeah.
10,000 less for the private pay?
Yeah, I'd like to see an increase, but at the same time, not an increase that's affordable. Because it's been the same amount for 2022 and 2023. So
1726.
1726. How do y'all feel?
Yeah, I think a step is warranted, just how big of a step, and I kind of feel, I don't want to do the large step, but I would definitely be in favor of a step. And midway point, that probably would work. See what results after a year, because if we do this every year, there's nothing holding us back from lowering it, but I think once we get to one point, I don't think it's easy to lower it, but we always could. But I'd like to do a step and then see what results after a year.
The real way to break it down is it's $5 a day.
Oh, yeah, that would be an easy way to figure out, yeah.
That's the real impact, is $5 a day.
I'm trying to find what the rent, you know, what inflation is for rent now and how much it's gone up, but I'm not finding it.
This would happen in addition to any other proposed rent changes that are, first of the year. This is just one of the moving pieces.
Well, I'm in favor of 1726.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, okay, I'll make the motion. Raise it to 1726 per day.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes.
Then I just briefly have a few updates. One, I've become aware of a couple of problems with some of the contracts with the HRA. The contract between HRA and HRDC was not reviewed by the county attorney before it was approved. I gave it to Jonathan. Jonathan looked at it, turned it back to me. I reminded him, this has already been approved before it was run to you, and he said there's structural deficits in this contract. It should be reviewed and considered and clarified. And of course, he only addressed the legal language in there. But I attended the meeting last night, and there were several issues that are not very clear in the relationship between HRA and HRDC, as in, and they were talking about clarifying who's paying for what. What is the $120,000 of the levy covering, and how much of that is going to HRDC, and how much of that is going for the costs of operating the properties. So that's not clearly laid out in the existing contract. Perhaps the biggest challenge is that the contract for property management with D.W. Jones was signed off by HRDC, and they do not have authority to sign a contract on behalf of the HRA. And there are significant problems with the D.W. Jones contract. One of which is, last night, the financial reports were not able to be approved because they were not done. They were not correct, they were not accurate, they were not right. There were a lot of questions. There were a lot of questions about how much rent is being collected, how much rent is not being collected, how much back rent is owed. There were no clear reports provided to provide those answers. But structurally, the biggest problem is that D.W. Jones has created their own bank account, and they're holding all the money relative to the management of the properties, and I don't think that's okay. I think that the HRA board that needs to be fixed. So I'm just pointing out those things that have come by way of my office in conversations that I've had with Jonathan about those, and just sharing that with you for what it's worth. The other challenge that I heard last night is HRA is running out of cash fast. I don't know if it's going to get fixed before they don't clear checks. But that was a anecdotal concern I heard last night. So that's all I really have to say about that item, because those came across my desk and I have a responsibility to report those to you.
And of course, being the county rep on the HRA, the concerns that were legitimate, the legitimate concerns, I thought should have been brought before the HRA board, and HRDC, how they made their way from the one individual to Jeff is, I can imagine. But I think if we're gonna work together as an organization, we have to have some trust, and if we have some questions and some concerns, they should be addressed to the board and the management team that's doing the stuff versus somebody outside of the organization. Going back to the contracts, HRDC, that HRA signed with HRDC, it's my understanding that none of the contracts that were ever signed with HLDC were ever viewed also by the county attorney. Let's see, the $120,000 that HRDC is charging, that does cover management and DW Jones. There's not any added. I know there was some confusion because the month before DW Jones presented, they kind of showed what they were collecting and the percentage that they were getting for the rents that they collect. That's how they're being paid, and that's coming out of the $120,000. It's not over and above the $120,000. And like I say, I appreciate that Jeff did notify me on some of this, and it sounds like the person with the HRA that did have concerns has been dealing with HRDC and has a lot of things covered in a sense, or maybe explained. And yes, there is some structural things that have to be changed at the HRA with how we conduct some of this business. But it kind of goes back to, this change has only been a little over between 3 and 4 months. And I kind of knew that there was going to be some learning curve and stuff like that. I appreciate that these things did come forward so that we can correct them on the front end here. I know that one figure that was talked about last night was being $40,000 over budget. But we actually did also talk last night about reviewing the budget and where we could make cuts and stuff like that. I know that since I've been on board with the HRA, I think that the group has really worked together to try to get things done. As it was reported in the paper months ago, there was some dysfunction and stuff like that, but I think that everything's, it's not smooth, but it's going pretty good, I thought, and I asked the question, does the HRA board want to continue to exist? And if so, and the majority of them said yes. A couple didn't answer my question, but that's okay. I just was dealing with the majority there. And like I say, there was some good discussion. They've got some plans on what to do. I don't know if I exactly want to divulge them to the public right now, but I think things are working through. But I do, like I say, I appreciate the members' concerns, and I hope that if there's concerns again in the future, that it's brought to the board and HRDC, and we work together to try to, achieve a goal here. I know that many of the HRA board members, and Steve was there present too, they have the same goal that I've heard for the last few years, that eventually we don't want to be asking the county for a levy. We hope to be self-sufficient. And whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I can't say. But I think part of it is there's been some deferred maintenance, and partly because of that, there's some apartments that can't be rented out. So in order to get that revenue coming in, we have to get those things taken care of. The DW Jones, the paperwork was there, and there was some questions about what the terminology is being used. So we've asked D.W. Jones to come, and whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 months in a row, so that they can present their side, the reports that they do provide, so that we can better understand what they're saying in their reports. The way D.W. Jones gets paid, we discussed that last night too. So I think a lot of the issues, and I believe the board member that had concerns, I also believe, thinks that we're in the right direction with correcting these issues. And if not, I hope that, to get solutions instead of just complaints.
I did attend the meeting last night intending to present this to the HRA board, but I was not recognized, so that's why I was there.
Okay.
The chair knew that. I wasn't recognized, and I had to be someplace by 6, so
Oh, okay.
I was not. I was intending to have that conversation, this conversation with them before I brought it to you. When it comes across my desk, I have to bring it to you as a board.
Ted, I have a question for you. So the 7% from D.W. Jones is approximately $70,000. So you're telling us that that's coming out of the $120,000. And I do understand that there's deferred maintenance, and I am very supportive of hiring D.W. Jones to do the management. And so then, since they're getting the 7%, their fee out of the $120,000, then out of the rents collected, shouldn't there be money for the deferred maintenance?
In a sense, yes, but there is so much deferred maintenance right now.
So do you know how much projected income is expected out of the rents, and then where that money is going?
Let's see if I got that.
I didn't bring that sheet with me.
Okay, yeah. It's in here somewhere.
May I speak to that?
Sure.
I am on the board of the HRA.
Come on
and
up to the chair so you can hear on the mic. And, yep.
Kristen Fake, board member of the HRA. Our September meeting, we received a preliminary budget from D.W. Jones. And again, that's just a preliminary budget. We are going over that budget, and we are breaking it down point by point. At this point, we don't have those answers to your questions because the budget was only preliminary. So hopefully by the next meeting of the HRA, we will have a solid budget that will reflect black numbers, not red.
And I think too, the D.W. Jones was kind of the, I don't want to say the worst case scenario, the upper level in a sense, if we could do everything.
Correct. In their budget, they addressed every bit of deferred maintenance that has been lacking in the last 6 years. And we obviously are going to put that onto a triage. There's at least $33,000 of that deferred maintenance that does not need to be done at this point. Again, D.W. Jones only took over in September 1st. And so we have had a September report, which was very preliminary. We did get better numbers for our October report. However, we did not have an understanding of them. So we have asked for clarification from D.W. Jones and from the RDC so that we can explain these numbers to anybody else who would ask. At this point, it was not the numbers, but it was how they coded things. And if you'll all recall, as this organization has progressed in the last 5 to 6 years, we've had huge issues with coding and with getting financials from the previous organization also. So it's not an easy thing to translate into hard numbers when you're dealing with 82 units. And
It sounds like we need to get a contract that originates from the HRA, not from the HRDC, with D.W. Jones. Is that correct? Is
I
that
want to
what-
correct a statement. Under the past management, there was financials every month. Got them every month. And the last financial done by the previous management was June 30th of 2023.
I've been on that board for 4 years, and we've had huge issues with financials. We were just getting to the point where we were getting the financials in the condition that we wanted to see them, in the format that we wanted to see them. Actually, we had probably only gotten 2 months' worth of financials in the format that we wanted to see them with the last organization that we worked with for years. So
You're gonna tell me that you had a problem with financials before that you were getting every month, when you haven't had any financial statements since June 30th?
we had financial statements.
The current management.
We had financial statements at our meeting last night.
You did?
Yes, we did.
That'd be the first one you've had then.
They were not accurate, they were not complete, you did not vote on them.
We did not vote on them. We are asking for clarification of the coding.
And I also would like to cite that under the performance standards, under your new contract, under section 2C, financial performance and viability, they are to provide up-to-date financial information on an ongoing basis and provide the up-to-date financial information at each HRA board meeting.
Correct.
In 5 months, and you just got your first one. In essence, you guys are driving in the dark without headlights.
You are absolutely correct. What I will tell you right now is we have had huge problems getting the previous organization to turn over all of the records that we've needed. So,
Again, that's a false statement. Every bit of documentation was turned over, and you were getting financial statements every month.
we've not
And not a
received all
single
of the
person
documentation that we've needed.
Never presented that any of those financial statements were inaccurate.
Again,
This is the first I've ever heard of it.
now you've heard.
Okay.
Okay, back to
So
my,
at some
To
point,
address Tom's
yeah,
question,
back to the question on the
is
contract.
there,
You made a statement that there's not a legal contract right now because it
Well,
was
the-
signed by HRDC.
yeah, the HRDC does not have authority to sign a contract on behalf of the HRA.
Okay, that was HRA been gonna be working on that?
We signed a contract with the HRDC. HRDC has a contract with DW Jones.
There's
And
nothing,
Jonathan is
there's,
saying that we can't.
there's nothing in the contract between HRA and HRDC that transfers that authority, and there's nothing that our county attorney or legal representation would say you would transfer that right to.
Then that should probably have been brought up at our meeting. We'll definitely go ahead and address that. But my understanding is that our contract is with the HRDC for executive director and property management. It
So
was,
by the DW Jones contract, they create their own bank account, they collect rents, they maintain the money. HRA or HRDC doesn't have signatories on that account. They don't actually have access to that account if DW Jones doesn't provide it. I reread that contract last night, and it is a problem.
Well,
And I
sounds
will-
like this needs to be worked out fairly soon, so we definitely have that cleared for your next meeting, I would say. Otherwise, this board will need to step in and, because, that money is just sitting there with DW Jones?
In an account that they created.
That they created, yeah. Otherwise, this board will need to do something.
Mr. Chair, also, and I hope in section 3 of the contract gets addressed too, because section 3 reimbursement of costs states that all on-site HHRA board approval staff and maintenance costs, including capital remodel or rehabilitation costs and contractual obligation costs. So in essence, that tells me that the HRA board has to pay the DW Jones contract.
The initial contract with HRA and HRDC says the $120,000 is for HRDC's administration.
So if they've said something different now, that's gonna be covered under the 120, that needs to be, this part of the contract needs to be addressed. So it seems pretty clear to me, I'm looking at this, and the question I would have of the HRA board is how did such glaring omissions happen?
I talked with Floyd Monday morning, and he has a death in the family. I don't think he went to last night's meeting.
He was at last
He
night.
he did end up
He was
going.
there.
Okay, good. He's got a good head for
Yeah.
this kind of business.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Floyd was one of those that expressed yes, that he wants to continue to have a HRA.
Yep, he did that with me too. And I would like to, but, you know, this is a situation that we need to get worked out.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we're talking about it, because the simple thing for me to do is just to ask the HRDC to review the streaming, this section of it. Then they get everybody's questions that were asked, then they can address them all. And hopefully, I'm pretty positive we'll have that all worked out by the next HRA meeting.
One of my concerns, Ted, would be that, well, first of all, the D.W. Jones contract, but secondly, this is taxpayer dollars. And so D.W. Jones cannot have access and the HRA board not have access. And we have, Jeff and Dave and I being on the executive board for Heritage, it's important, we've talked about this, that this board will now get financial reports, hopefully they'll be starting in January for Heritage.
You
Actually started already?
you already started, you got them
Yeah, you're right.
last month.
Yeah, we
and-
did get it last
yep.
month. Thank
They'll
you.
be a month behind, but yes, you'll get them
Yeah,
monthly.
that's right, I'd forgotten that. Anyway, because we have such a large dollar amount in Heritage, it's important we do that. Since we have such a large dollar amount in the HRA properties, I would also like then the financial reports given to this board each month.
Okay.
Because we have almost $6 million in buildings.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And if there's not money, guess who pays? And so that's why it's so important that every dollar is accounted for in a well manner, because this is taxpayer dollars.
So, and the kind of question I would have is, you know, I'm looking for assurances from you folks on the HRA board. You know, from this point on, how can we be assured that HRDC is going to fulfill the contract obligations? Because already they haven't in the current one, in 5 short months.
And they're getting $50,000 a year. If they're actually taking out the $70,000 fee.
All good questions. Hopefully, we will get an answer to each and every one of them.
Well, it's good that we were talking about it,
Yeah.
for sure.
In the open instead of behind closed doors.
Correct. Definitely, that's why I called Floyd and asked him, well, could you possibly be here at Tuesday's meeting? And that's where he told me about the death in the family.
And, you know, one last statement I would make, I don't think there's a single person on this board that's opposed to supporting the HRA. So don't misconstrue anything. We want the problem solved. We want these issues addressed and solved so that we have a well-functioning HRA. But it's really hard to give more taxpayer dollars when you see this until you see it get better. So I think that's just doing the proper job for the taxpayers and proper oversight. So we need to see that the HRA board and whatever management comes in can manage the affairs of the HRA. If they can, we need the HRA. We need to have, housing is an integral part of economic development in today's environment. We need to have this functioning and working.
So Ted, specific questions I have is what does 120,000 cover? And so then if the HRDC is paying the 70,000 out, then what are they doing with the 50,000? What is the county getting? What is the HRA getting for $50,000? What is the rental income for 2024? How much is deferred maintenance cost? And how are they breaking down the rental income? And where are those dollars going? Why will that then not cover the costs for the deferred maintenance needed for 2024 and putting some away for future years? And then the maintenance person that needs to be hired, is that a D.W. Jones employee? Is that an HRA employee? Is that an HRDC employee? So those are the questions that I have.
And you need that financial statement. Like I say, you're driving in the dark without headlights here because you don't know where you're going or what happened last month, and you have no idea without that balance sheet what your cash balances are unless you're calling the bank every day to get a snapshot. But that's just a snapshot of one day. So it's really hard to see, because you've got to watch those cash balances, and from my understanding of what I've heard, through different email threads and different information from the chair, is those cash balances are dwindling rapidly. So rapidly that we could be out of money in 2 months at the HRA. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. And that's why we're engaging in this, because we see this. And we've seen it for a while, seen it coming, and we don't want to end up in that position. So how do we fix it? How do we get the fix in here and get it right? At some point in time, if it can't be fixed, we have to do something else. We can't just sit and throw money at it.
You referenced an email thread between yourself and the chair of our board.
Mhm.
I'd like
Look at the
access to
email
that,
that you
please.
guys have had over the year.
I'd like to have access to that, please.
Well, you do, you're part of the thread.
I'd like to have access to all of the threads,
Yeah.
all of the emails between you and our chair.
They're your threads, they're not mine.
So then the other thing, what Tom alluded to, is the contract stuff needs to be done ASAP. Because currently it's an illegal contract.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Jeff if he could forward those, Jonathan's
I will
concerns.
summarize the concerns that Jonathan and I have discussed
Yeah,
to both boards.
Okay.
I'm just discussing them anecdotally now,
Yep.
but, yep.
Okay, I think we're done with that discussion.
I'm done with that. I'm ready to move on. I got two more brief updates.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yep, thanks for coming. All right.
One is relative to the commission vacancies that we talked about last week. And I know that we have people who are willing to serve another term in many of those instances. Heritage Living Center Board is looking for a new member because they do have somebody retiring and going away. Do you want me to advertise all of those for a 3-week period to see if there are other public members that are interested? Or do we already have people in place for Planning Commission, Parks, Extension, HRA?
Extension, the person's willing to serve but willing to let someone else serve, so I would ask that you also advertise extension.
Just from typical procedure, I would advertise them all and identify the district they would be from, as we did in our conversation last week. And if any other names come up, they would come to you for a recommendation, to review them, to make a recommendation to the board for who to fill those positions with.
I'd prefer, I've already talked with two on the board and the Board of Adjustment, and they both want to come back. I'd prefer not to see those advertised,
On Board of Adjustment?
correct?
Okay.
At least in the position that I've talked with.
And I guess that's be the same with me. I had two that are coming up, one on extension and one on the planning commission. And also Brian Opus with the North Country Community Health Board.
That's really not a community member, so that's an easy one.
Yeah, so, yeah, and Brian said yes. Mike Kovakovic with the planning commission, he says, I definitely want to do it again. And got emails in support of Mike's performances and everything. I've only heard good things about Mike, so I appreciate that he wants to continue. I think that other board members here who've been on the planning commission before wouldn't mind being on the planning commission again too, so. So the only one I've got out there that I haven't contacted yet would be Teresa Ohm with Extension. And I don't have Teresa's phone number, so I thought about either giving the Flying W a call or swinging by there on my way home and seeing if she's there and just seeing what if she wants to continue or not.
Okay. I'm just asking what you would like me to put out there, so.
So I'll talk to her, and if she does not, then I'll contact you.
Okay.
And you can add
We
that.
want to run this ad, if we want to close it on the 15th, so we have information before the end of the year,
Yeah.
we've got to submit it today, tomorrow? Well, we'll submit it tomorrow.
Tomorrow for a Wednesday.
Okay, but District 2 extension, please put that in there. Mhm.
And as I mentioned before, I recommended Russ Johns again for the park board, so Corey's got that. And I also recommended Ken on the planning commission again, and I sent that recommendation forward to Eric.
Okay.
to deal with.
Okay.
So not the Parks Board. Looks like that, those two are taken care of. And then on the Board of Adjustment, not Ken and Veronica.
All the
and-
openings you guys have handled.
Right,
Yeah.
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 None of the openings we've already handled. No advertising. And if necessary, we can do a motion to approve those if we have to keep it from being advertised. Do you need a motion for
I
those?
need you to make a motion at the organizational meeting to place those people.
Okay. All right.
And someone can always express interest. It doesn't
Right.
even, just because it's not advertised doesn't mean someone can't approach us and say, I'm interested in serving. But if we have someone in place, we can say no.
Well, I was just wondering about how they would feel if they saw an ad looking for somebody when we've already talked with
Yeah,
them.
that's true,
where I'm
too.
coming from.
Yeah,
And
that's
in
true.
order to stop that, if we have to make a motion now, I would.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm only advertising for heritage and identifying a general paragraph that says the county regularly is looking for public members to serve on a variety of commissions.
No, and I would like you to advertise for extension
Extension two?
for District Two.
Okay.
Because that person just said, if someone else wants to serve, I'm willing to go off.
Okay, very good. And then lastly, I want to introduce a topic because we don't have a work session in December. And I probably am not going to bring this forward till after the first of the year. But a number of economic development items have come up this year. A number of items are coming up again now in development and conversations and coordination. And we are getting to the point of complexity that we really need to consider having a countywide EDA to be able to support that infrastructure. I can do more of a deep dive into that. But statute, the Hubbard County HRA was established in 1996, but we have not established a countywide EDA. There are a lot of reasons we would want to do that. There's a lot of ways that we can find to pay for that. The process of that is, would require a resolution from this board to establish a committee to do some research and prepare a report and make a recommendation to this board. Then it would very likely, and part of the reason is we need a lot of that administration to be done by county staff because we need accountability in reporting on that. Admissions to federal and state economic development programs. Right now, we're relying on contracts and nonprofit organizations to do that on our behalf, and we're not doing that ourselves. Administration of tax abatement, administration of TIF districts, if we ever get into something like that. The ability to research and identify opportunities for land acquisition so that we're in a favorable position. If we get the infrastructure loan for the development of housing, who's going to end up owning the Pinecrest apartments? All of these things fit better in a county department than they do us having relationships with other people. So I'm just throwing that out there as a conversation at this point. Becker County has an EDA. It's county department, county staff. If you go on their website, I happened to look today, they have a really great YouTube promotional video about the benefits of their economic development. I've heard several conversations. I've heard Mary Thompson ask several times, what can I present to somebody who comes to town and says, we've got an industrial proposal and we need this amount of land and we need this and this and this, and what kind of incentives do you have for us? We don't have a package. We don't have an answer for them. We don't have a way to welcome them to the community. People want to build business and industry in Hubbard County, in this end and that end, and all over and throughout. And we need a plan if we're going to grow in an organized and reasonable manner. And some of those projects are big projects. Some of them are going to require big investments to get to. So I'm advocating that this board should consider going through the process of evaluating an opportunity to have a countywide EDA as a county department. That wouldn't happen until this time next year, because if we're adding staff, I wouldn't do it out of turn with budget planning, so it'd be a 25 budget impact at the earliest. Anyway, I'm putting that out there. I'd like to bring it to a work session early in the year. There's a kind of a lengthy process to go through. If the board authorizes a resolution, we have to form a committee. The committee has 60 or 90 days to do their research, to do their meeting, to get public input, and to provide a report back to the board. To have a report like that back in time for us to plug it into budgeting for 2025, we'd have to start it in February or March. So
Would funding the EDA be in place of funding the HLDC then?
it's entirely possible it's in place of funding the HRDC. If we had.
HLDC.
And HLDC. If we have administrative cost in an HRA, administrative cost in a nonprofit organization, and we create a third organization that would have the ability to provide the administrative oversight to the other two, we would be able to do it with less cost than we currently have,
And more control.
and more control.
And more opportunity.
I was gonna add, it's critical actually for economic development throughout the whole county. Right now, we don't have many tools available for us, and the HLDC sits here and tries to analyze these things and what can be done. The only entity that has a lot of tools in its chest right now is the city of Park Rapids. So then you wonder why things get done in the city of Park Rapids and they don't get done sometimes elsewhere, because there aren't the tools to do it elsewhere right now. We need to create those tools, and then when those opportunities present themselves, we can actually do something about it. Right now, we can't.
We need an HRA because they have certain authority and rights. I'm making the claim that we need an EDA. We also need the HLDC because a nonprofit organization has access to money and grants and programs that EDAs and HRAs don't. They have the ability to deliver a Pinecrest project in a way that we wouldn't be able to do because we'd be having to pay the higher wages on that project, and it costs another $700,000.
Does the city have an EDA? And if so, could that be combined then to save costs?
There's a process of reviewing all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to review all of that with any existing authorities in the county before we would, as part of that process. It'd be part of the discovery of the committee.
Okay.
So yes.
So then the levy, though, that the HRDC gets from the county residents, isn't that something that it's a state?
No, I'm talking about the HRA levy.
Okay.
If the HRA got the $120,000 levy and paid the administrative fee back to the county EDA, and then that much went back towards the housing programs, and a good portion of what we pay to HLDC for administration came to the county, and then we provided administrative support to that nonprofit, we would spend less money and have greater control over the administrative support for all three agencies.
The county board would have a lot more oversight. The trick to it all is you want all those entities and you want them working seamlessly together. So putting it together in a manner where everybody's helping each other and making this work is the way to do it.
There's a lot to be worked out,
Silos.
and I've just started my investigation, and I'll probably put it on a meeting in January so we can have a conversation about it.
And there is a potential of something happening up in the neck of your woods, Ted, that cannot be done without an EDA.
Just based on the complexity, yeah. So that's all I have to, that's all I have to report on that. The last thing I would make is a note that I just came up with is, I think it just came up a couple days ago. I think we talked last time Corey was here that there's a possibility of creating a law enforcement or a public safety academy with coordination with the school as part of an academic program for 24-25. I don't know who I said that in front of them in AMC, but somebody at AMC called and asked if I'd be willing to participate in a panel at the Public Safety Committee discussion on December 4th. I talked with Corey. Corey's fully in support of getting this in place for the 24-25 school year. So I told Carly I'd participate in the panel and give a 5 or 10 minute overview of our idea in development with a goal of having something knocked out by March. But I just wanted you to know that I'll be presenting at that committee.
Good job.
At AMC. At least I told her I would, and she's on vacation. I don't think she's gonna say no now that I said yes.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna miss that.
I don't know, yeah. I don't know what that's gonna look like. Actually, it's really gonna be nice because Crystal, the career coordinator for the school, basically put together a really nice outline for the principal and Corey and myself of what we need to do when to have this done by March so we can have it in place next year. And it'll take me 5 minutes to review that timeline. So that's actually the meat of the conversation, so. But it's exciting.
So, I just, going along with that, you know, we've had some bumps in the road this year, but if you look at all that's going on in our county and how we want to direct this forward for opportunity and growth and sustainability for our county, there's a lot going on. For the good.
People want to be here.
And then we get to Maria and property values going up and, and taxes and everything
You know,
attached to it.
But
It
that
just,
doesn't necessarily, remember
it all
though,
kind
if
of
property values
compounds,
go
so.
up, that doesn't necessarily mean our
Oh,
taxes.
no,
go
no,
up.
I'm not saying that, but,
Yeah.
yeah, it can actually reduce it when you have more economic activity, so
Yep.
I understand that, but.
The only good news is the tide has turned. It's, instead of going like this, it's kind of going like this right now. Which I think is, when I saw those values, I thought that's really super good news. And Maria's and her staff are really good with those numbers.
Yes, they are.
They will find a way to make this work. We can have high confidence in the numbers coming out of Tyler. I guarantee that that's true now. And I know the past few years, watching her work with the public during the County Board of Appeal and working through with the local Board of Appeals, I know that she handles tough situations and relates really well to people and provides the information they need.
Yes,
You know,
yes, she
Not
does. She
not
does
always
a
the answers
very
they
good
want,
job.
but the
Yeah.
information that they have that's available, that's used to make those decisions. So I'm really looking forward to a year where the rates don't go up that high. You know, if we're at 90%, in my mind, you really want to be 95 to 100. You want to be in that middle, because if some things get excluded or some things change, you don't want to get a direction from the state. That 95 to 100 is kind of the sweet spot. And she generally agrees with it, but there's a lot of moving pieces, so.
I think people tend to intermingle their valuation and their tax too much.
They absolutely do.
It gets
So-
confusing.
Yep.
And I don't know if it would be helpful to have one of Kay's staff available at some of the meetings just to answer some of those questions on the
with the
side,
truth
or
and
if it's
tax-
gonna drag it
Yep.
out forever.
In the Truth and Taxation meeting, just as a general reminder, the Truth and Taxation meeting coming up in December is about the proposed budget and levy for 2024. But almost all the people that come in have questions about their valuation.
Yeah.
So the assessor's office staff will be here that night. They always are. And they'll talk to people individually about the values. There's nothing they can do about the ones that were approved in June, right? But they can take a look and talk to them through the process. Again, in the spring, when we're doing local boards and county boards, it's all about value and not about tax. But Kay's staff is always here for those. As a matter of fact, Kay's on the board for the County Board of Appeals. She has to be here statutorily. And they're always willing to talk about that. Those things are always pushing and pulling on each other, and the tax is always a year behind value, and it's a really hard thing to communicate to people. But we will keep trying to explain, if you have a question about your values, you need to make this appeal by this deadline. And then you get to have a conversation and some input with the county board relative to the budget and the levy.
So one thing I did at Action Park Rapids, Steve, was I took that sheet, that was given to us about tax capacity. And so and that's what made sense to the people as far as when they were thinking in their mind. So just to review, if you take a $250,000 house and you look at all the 87 counties in Minnesota, in Becker County, just that, and it's the same house across the board because of tax capacity. In Clearwater County, the tax is $646, in Becker County it's $754, in Hubbard it's $784, in Beltrami it's $1275, in Wadena it's $1502, and Monoman it's $1598. I think if people could even understand that simple of a concept, that's helpful for me to understand, put my taxes and my property value in perspective.
Living somewhere else isn't always cheaper.
No, no, there's more to it than my
There's
property value.
misperception.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I understand it. Thank you.
I know you understand. I'm just saying that made
It's a
sense
good
to the
resource.
people in Action Park Rapids about kind of what tax capacity means.
So I just got an email from the website, when people just send in an email request, they come straight to me. So I get to see them, and then I get to forward them. And a resident just said, I just got my tax notice, and I don't see that our homestead is listed, and I know I did the paperwork. That goes to Maria.
Yep.
She will make sure that gets done. If she had a question about her tax, I would send it to Kay. Just, that kind of thing happens hundreds of times a week. So that's all I have.
Okay. All right, thank you. Committee reports.
Maybe before the committee reports, who will be at the, while I'm thinking of it, or otherwise I'll forget, manager's meeting.
Oh, I got a note for it.
Okay.
We can, well, since you brought it up, we can bring it up now. Department head meeting, who's gonna be there?
I was at the last one. And if we go in turn, then it would be,
You're going to be around, aren't you?
End of November?
Yeah.
Next Tuesday.
Do you want to go next Tuesday?
Is it my turn already again? That was fast.
it's like it's been 4 months
Yeah.
ago.
I can do that.
So David?
I do not have any topics for general government unless people have specific questions for me.
And I've got one reminder that our next board meeting will not be until December 12th.
Correct.
And then anything else for meetings to note? Not committee reports.
I just have one, so quick. Just had a Heritage Executive meeting and discussed a lot of things, obviously the standard stuff, but looks like we'll be able to probably end our regular executive meetings here at the end of the year. The transition to Knut Nelson has gone pretty smoothly, so at the end of the year, we will only be holding executive meetings as needed instead of every month.
And I must say that Knut Nelson has brought a lot of practical, helpful knowledge for this area. Angie from Knut Nelson has been great to work with, and Steph and her and the whole team have just, everything's up and running.
Angie brings a finance team, an IT team.
Oh, man.
All kinds of support that have been really super instrumental in making a quick turn.
Yep, yep.
So it's been good.
So let's see, you touched on Action Park Rapids. I just have two meetings, and one of them is things going on in the area. So I just wanted to let everybody know that Heritage, the dove project, has returned. If anybody wants to go over there, there's doves on the trees with information about somebody that they can buy a gift for and then bring it back. And it will be given to a resident there. And then the County Social Services Department is launching a winter clothing drive. So if anybody wants to buy new clothing, you can drop it off there. And then last night, we had the Board of Adjustment Planning Commission, and so we had sent back the educational. And so Ken said, so what did the county board have a problem with? And I said, the county board had a problem with this CUP possibly will be approved, and then they have to, before they can even be approved, they have to turn around and do a variance. Well, that led to some discussion, and at the end, it turned out that it was really good that we had sent it back, because they drafted a whole new language which was a much broader coverage. And then the discussion led that educational use could be used in tier 2, 3, and 4. But Eric will be bringing forth the language. I think there was either 5 or 6 bullet points. But it turned out to be a much better written recommendation. So, and I have to concur. Every board member there comes well prepared. You know, they have a long history. They know what's going on. It's a good board, and I'm glad that they all want to be reappointed. That's all I have.
Okay. I'll go next. Well, SWCD, I gave everybody
Yep,
the
thank you.
packet. That pretty well explains much better than I could the things that they have accomplished over the past year, their financials for next year, and also some of their goals for next year. So maybe it's some good read, if you have a moment some time to do that. Go through that. We had the LAC Mental Health Board, and they, in their areas, part of the agenda where they talk about mental health needs, they discuss things like they need better access to health providers. It often takes a long time to get an appointment, and that's partly due to the lack of providers. So they suggested maybe somehow there'd be scholarships for training for people in this area. And they also brought up a lack of transportation in rural areas. You know, most of those who are on that board, they live right in Park Rabbit, so they can take our transit system. But sometimes there's people who are outside of the city that are needing of transportation too.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest questions I get, calls from residents. You know, I'm up here in Fardin Township, and I need to get to my medical appointments in Bemidji, and there's nothing, you know, and I've always connected these people with Brian Opus at Social Services, and he's always come through and found an answer. But yeah, transportation is a big deal.
For those who are on Medicaid, I believe it is, and they have a medical transportation, there are volunteers for that, and the volunteer will get reimbursed for mileage. They would have to submit a form.
That's the highest area of fraud in Prime West.
Okay.
So I'm not accusing anybody of fraud. They
Yeah.
just have to document well.
Yeah, because there is a need for it.
Yes, there is a
Yeah.
report.
You just have to catch those that are guilty of fraud. Otherwise, that's all I have. Steve?
You know what, I forgot one thing. So from Action Park Rapids, it was brought to our attention that tree lighting is on Friday. And then after the tree lighting, there is gonna be a free, play at the Armory.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
Yep.
Steve?
I went to Northwest Juvenile. It was my first time attending in person, so I'm still kind of in that learning curve part of it. Talked about the city of Bemidji, they're kind of rezoning, and I think the center kind of fell through the cracks as far as being accounted for, the use that's happening there. And I'm not sure of all the background on it, so maybe Ted has some more information, but.
Yeah, there was a deal where, if you guys don't know where the location of it is, it's just west of Bemidji, next to the city itself, downtown. It's got somewhat of a long road that goes through a swampy area back to the high piece of ground, in a sense, if you wanna call it that, where the center is. They talked about rezoning it to residential 1, which there is no place to build houses in this area anyhow. So if it did get rezoned into R1, then if they needed the roof fixed or increase the parking lot or add to the building or everything, they'd have to get a variance. And of course, my question was, the city of Bemidji has a maintenance facility just to the west of Northwest Juvenile. Are they also gonna be put under R1, residential 1, because they're right next door? But obviously, no, they're not. But it's my understanding there was a joint planning board that brought it forward type of thing, but they are disbanding at the first of the year, and that this basically for now has died. It's my understanding and hopes, because otherwise it'll put undue strain on Northwest Juvenile if anything ever needs to be done or improved out there, so. I'm hoping that is the result. There was some letters from different counties and stuff too that were against it, so I think I'm hoping it's died. It didn't make any sense.
No. And other than that, I just said, well, I was at HRA last night and talked about that already, so. That's all I have.
Okay.
Well, then I'll continue with the Northwest Juvenile. Let's see, there was one, we had talked about a policy where the commissioners would have to go through a background check. We talked about it a little bit more in length at the executive board meeting last month that I'm a part of. I felt that when it first came up 3 months ago, I kind of thought, you know, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but then as I had time to think about it, at the executive board, I was allowed to speak basically in opposition to it. I had one of the executive board members say, I think you've swayed me, but that's about all that was said. Part of the reason why it was brought up, was talked about, was to protect the kids and to protect the liability of the center. But then when we had a regular board meeting, was it 3 or 4 people spoke in opposition to the policy? Some were said, like, as a member of the HRD, of the Northwest Juvenile, I was appointed by the county board. And Tim Sumner says, we're judged every election. You know, if we're as public officials do something wrong, you don't think our constituents are gonna find out and it's gonna come out in public? Jim with the Cass County Social Services spoke first against it. Sheriff Wilkes did from Cass County. So by the time I got to speak, I felt good that more people on the board saw my point of view. And we decided not to do background checks on the commissioners. And part of the reason too is I have no contact with the kids. One time I saw some of the kids there was when we did the tour, and the second time I saw kids was when we had the 50th celebration, and there was a tent outside with had food and seating and stuff, and with all the staff and former board members and stuff like that. I mean, I had no contact with the kids, and so it didn't make any, it started to me not to make any sense. It seems like, as I spoke, another constitutional right that's being eroded a little bit. We already know about the First Amendment, how the government wants to tell us what is and isn't misinformation. You know, Second Amendment right, we're fighting that all the time. Fourth or Fifth amendments are getting hammered too, but people don't seem to talk about those. But anyhow, that got kind of taken care of. Then there was the discussion on policy things. And the one I kind of want to highlight for right now is they can no longer do strip searches. Sheriff's departments can't do it, so there was a little bit of talk about the body scanners. And Cass County has put one in, and they talked about some other areas. Some of the discussion was it takes 6 months to get trained on the operations of a body scanner. And you have to have the trained personnel doing it. So I would assume these might be hidden costs that we don't know about. So we would probably have to have at least 2 sheriff's deputies trained on that. Then they talked about the space and that it takes up. Plus the thing I never thought about is the radiation that it emits. And I think about, we're gonna be doing the remodel and everything. So before and just to step back a little bit, I think it's something that's needed. When they talk about the things that they can't do anymore, as far as searches and that go, like they said, they could have somebody come in carrying a gun, so they take that gun away, but then they could pat them down and that's it. You know, and
So how did they look for drugs?
exactly,
Because Corey talked about drugs being brought into the jail.
Patting them down, that's it. That's all they can do.
And they talked about, even though I can't remember what the facility was, even though they've got a body scanner, they've had 2 fentanyl overdoses. You know, so it's not gonna solve everything, but it is gonna help.
Does the body scanner show the interior of a body or just the exterior?
I think just that's a good question, though.
Because that might be how they got it in.
Yeah.
I've seen a scan from one of those body scans, and it'll show just your exterior, but it'll show you complete outline
Okay. Yeah.
very well.
And like I say, with and they didn't have a whole lot as far as, you know, I made the comment, you know, if it was something that you just wheeled in on a 2-wheel cart and you plugged it into the wall, great, but where do we have room right now? I'm imagining we'd have to put it in the Sally port because of the size of the machine and the limited space we currently have in the booking area, plus then the radiation that it emits. What are we doing to the fellow deputies that are just sitting there and stuff like that? So, like I say, I would support getting one, whether we get it now, install it, and then have to take it back out, install it again. Like I say, if it's a $500 deal to reinstall it somewhere, then that's no big deal, but if it's gonna cost thousands of dollars, and even if we've got one today and yet 6 months down the road is when they can use it because they have to have somebody trained. So I've still got a lot of questions, but I'm glad it came up at the Northwest Juvenile.
They would probably have to wear something, you know, to see how much exposure they're getting.
They
Something
don't
like,
do that at the dentist anymore, though. I wonder why.
yeah, you used to have the vest put on you
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and I'm wondering if it's lower,
Yeah, I don't know.
or, you know, whatever it is, but. Let's see, I'm gonna go back to, the Hubbard County Township Association meeting last night. Something that my fellow Commissioner Steve talked about, the county website and the portion where you drop down the window for government, and then there's a PDF for township officials and stuff. Steve made a good point that it should be updated, and we asked the people that were in attendance there if they could contact, and I told them I thought it would be
It's K.
Kay? Okay, I didn't know if it was Denise or Kay, okay. So I gave the people the wrong information.
And I do believe Kay sends out a letter every year,
Okay,
but if it's not returned,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's what like Steve was talking about, and I've experienced the same thing, where I look up, oh, okay, you know, Helga Township, or maybe I shouldn't even say a name. The township meets on this day at this time, and I'll get there, and I'm either late, or they're not even doing it that night or whatever, and it's kinda like, okay, maybe I should have called or something, but, that's the only other thing I wanted to add to the Township Association stuff. Let's see, we pretty much covered HRA, like Steve said there. Mississippi Headwaters Board, we went through, like the November press release. Basically, this is, in Itasca County. Corey Smith, one of the new commissioners there, testified in front of Congress. They're trying to do a land swap on Lake Winnebagosh with a current landowner and the federal government, the forestry. They've got some land that they'd like to swap. It would work out good for both entities. We also had a zoning request, variance request here for Hubbard County. It's on Wolf Lake. There again, for those that don't know, the Mississippi River and any Mississippi River lakes, which would be in Wolf Lake in our county, they got the okay from our planning commission, and then it has to come before the Mississippi Headwaters Board. This was a case where it was approved in 2021. What actually happened was there was supposed to be a septic tank to the drain field on one side, and then a holding pond or a cistern, I guess maybe you want to call them, I can't remember, for runoff. Well, they actually got switched around. And the homeowner doesn't know how. It's obviously a mistake by the contractor, but the planning commission looking at it, it didn't have any adverse effects or anything. At the Mississippi Headwaters Board level, we were concerned, you know, the phrase of asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission came up. But it seemed like it was an honest mistake. It didn't do any harm. There may be more erosion damage and stuff like that if we required the homeowner to dig them both up and swap them. And obviously there'd be other added costs. So we eventually okayed it, but we just, have that concern that we okay something and then it gets switched around. But to the defense of the homeowner, they're the ones that brought it to our attention. Because once all that stuff's in the ground, how are we gonna know? So I appreciate the homeowner coming forward with that. Talked about our funding, how it's comes from the department. It starts from the governor and it goes to the DNR. And I think I maybe mentioned this before about how now the legislature okayed the DNR to take 5% of our funding. It hasn't been finalized yet, but it may just, the DNR may be nice to us this year and just pass it through without taking the 5%. But they're also talking about increasing our funding from 124,000 to 158. We asked to go forward with that. We're gonna contact the legislatures and stuff like that. Read some of the responses from the biennial conference. It had good reviews. I appreciate Tom and like Corey was there and Sharon Netzel from the Hubbard County Coalition of Lake Associations and that. So it was a good turnout and everybody liked it. Everybody seemed to say that they had learned something new that they didn't know about the Mississippi Headwaters Board. We also discussed again, that's coming up, I believe, next month or January. Aiken County's got their slogan for their county, naturally better. And it looks like they're going to make an agreement with us to be on our Minnesota Traditions, which is a website that was created by the Mississippi Headwaters Board to help spread the word about AIS, the aquatic invasive species. And let's see, I think that's all I got for Mississippi. HRDC, we had a presentation. Get the ladies right now. Andrea Brennan, she's the CEO and president of Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. She talked about the fund itself, how there's two different kind of entities, one that works with the metropolitan area, one that works with Greater Minnesota. Be the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. She talked about they're looking at focusing more on the Greater Minnesota Fund than the metropolitan area. They felt that there's been lacking in the rural and outstate Minnesota areas, Greater Minnesota areas. She talked about the Minnesota's legislature. They've created 15 new programs for housing. Of course, many of them, maybe I should say they're in the development stages. We've had some questions about different programs, and basically I've always gotten the answer of, well, we're in the process of developing that type of a thing. They talked about the current programs that are currently available. They plan on doing a better job to serve Greater Minnesota. They talked about the Greater Minnesota Infrastructure Grant. Let's see, that USDA Rural Development, Tier 2 for small cities, and I guess my final note is the program's under development, so. And let's see if there was anything else. Of course, they talked about the Regional Transportation Coordination Council and the things that they're doing there. Oh, and then, of course, safe and sick time. I guess that, when I think about it, that's been covered by a lot of our committees. And we all know what that is. I appreciate the presentation that we got to kind of explain what the effects we're gonna have, that Gina presented to us and stuff like that, so. And I believe that covers everything that I had. Any questions?
Did you have something, Kay?
No, I just heard my name a couple of times and,
When your ears were ringing?
Stop listening, was working, and I kept hearing my name, so I am here in case you had questions for me.
Well, I referred the people, I had some people at the Hubbard County Township Association. They were concerned, one gentleman talked about, he's got different parcels. One, the tax went up 70%, one 40%, and the other one's 0. Another gentleman in Henrietta Township complained about his township taxes being doubled, but he's on the township board and doesn't know where that happened. And I was mistaken, and I referred them to Maria, which I've now been educated, and I should have thought about it. You know, because when maybe if I would have gotten my statements before the meeting, and I would have noticed your name and stuff on the return address, it would have clicked more in my head. But of course, I thought about them being assessments, and I thought about the assessor name recognition. But I think the gentleman after the meeting too that was quite heated, he's concerned about the computer programs and stuff like that and how we're relying too much on computers and we should be running tests and stuff like that. And I said, well, I'm sure that they're doing all of this stuff.
Well, with the computer programming, it's a human input. So if we can get the human input correct, then we've maybe won the battle. But when I hear Henrietta, I do think my first thought would be to look at the values of the property and the change from 23 to 24. If it was Wadena or Cass Lake, I would immediately look at the school values. Because with those cross-county values, and this is good for all of you to know, if it's a cross-county school district, Bemidji, Walker, Wadena, or Cass Lake, those would hit very hard because in 23, when I did the certified, I didn't calculate properly and I didn't catch it until afterwards, and this Department of Revenue didn't allow me to correct it. They said correct it in 2024. Walker School District and Bemidji School District were not affected very much. They probably won't notice it at all. Cass Lake and Wadena will notice it. Now, I'm seeing 70% increases or 50% increases, and it's in the school district. They both had referendums that were passed, and so those voted upon levy lines are seeing huge increases because I had to take the rate that should have been, the difference in what should have been from 2023 and add it to the correct rate for 2024. And it's making a very large impact in 2024. So they're calling and I'm taking every single call. I'm hoping it's not everybody, but you know, and I've got worksheets here. So there was 213 parcels in Monaga, and this is the one for 3,700 parcels. No, excuse me. 911 parcels in Cass Lake. So if I have to take those calls, I will, because I don't have a choice. But so far they haven't, you know, they've been very good to talk to. But that's what we're doing. We've already pre-funded the school districts, and in 24, when we collect those tax revenues, then we get paid back. So we couldn't let the school districts suffer because of our error. But that's what has happened.
So would this be something then, just a correction for 1 year and maybe it
This is
would?
a correction for 1 year.
And then I guess the other thing was that the townships update, was it Kay that we're supposed to?
Oh, yes, there was a question that Ted had on the website when you are able to look up township officials. Evidently some of that information isn't
meeting dates and times were probably the meeting dates, times, places. That would be the biggest things.
And I,
So as we're notified, if there's a change, whenever we're notified of an update, we have Mark update it.
okay,
I'm not able to update that one because that's on the, I don't have permission, so IT does it, but we update the worksheet and ship it off to Mark, and he's great about updating it.
okay. I have an email from, one of the supervisors at White Oak Township. I'll give that to you. Do you remember what the lady that came up at the end, she was trying to contact you or something and couldn't get through, or, but anyhow, it came up with wanting to update them on the website. She asked if I wanted her email, and she gave it to me, so I thought I'd just pass it on to you.
Yes, you can.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Steve?
Not unless, I don't have anything.